Gaming, the 4 stars that made the majority of the Genshin Impact community cry. When it came out, all the previously known mains of carries Pyro came out on an defense of their mains and was noticed and affected by what gaming came to contribute objectively speaking, and after so long, subsequently, and with the evolution of the whole goal of NATLAN, and with the inclusion of Italy, has re-entered above other carries Pyro to very high ceilings with minimal investment to Cone just and with a team of only 4 stars. Can do a lot more than many teams of many 5 stars, but above all, its current realistic roofs can enter the top 4 and top 5 major damage of all. Genshin Impact. And not only that, but having rotations of more than 5 million absurd. Because in the abysses, the bosses, they barely have as much as 3 million lives. And if there are waves, you can lower the waves and the enemies that appear later of 2 rotations. Today we will see the legendary build of one of the only 3-4 stars that actually appear. Among them, Kuki Shinobu with the Hyper Blooms. Bennett on an infinity of teams. Gaming on his own team, and Xiangling no longer appears, because any team where Xiangling Mavuika is would do better work, like teams. Currently from Kinich and Mualani, and neither is Xingqiu, because there is always a Furina or a Yelan improving Xingqiu ceilings, but gaming is one of the 3-4 stars appearing on the top 10 teams in the game. Welcome everyone to the legendary 4-star most broken build as Genshin's DPS. Impact Story. Leave a good like, good ultimate, subscribe, leave a good comment. Thank you so much for enjoying watching the video. Thank you for everything. Love and support. Remember that it costs you nothing. It is free. Recommends and positions. The video, it helps a lot, and the entire channel team is very grateful. Thank you. For everything, let him enjoy if you are eating, because he comes cinema with this build today. Welcome guests to the directs. Link below in the description, and let's go with the legendary build of gaming. Well, so this one to start the fun thing, just with cone and gun. 4 stars can already tear you apart and make you holes in about 50-60 seconds. 2 minutes left for the next, and in this current abyss in the first half is very comfortable and highly recommended to play gaming. There are abysses where, depending on the phases, the enemies, the shields, and the mechanics that forced you, you know what they have done very well in Hojuverse, the one to distribute certain abysses to some teams, yes, and others not by the resistances, but gaming is something always very solid normally, and if it's half right. I already say that to use it with cone and weapon is more than enough. Gives a performance. What's he doing besides being a carry and not being too hot? Well, it basically jumps, and let's start by explaining the normal attack descending. Because in some cases you will have to climb, use, and even crown above your yor. Last, but in other cases not used. And why? Because it depends on playing Xianyun. It's the only difference. If you play Xianyun, as Xianyun gives you the chance to jump and downhill with the controller without having to wait for the cooldown of your elementary ability, after the combo that I already explained correctly, all the rotation in which the enemies before finishing that rotation will disappear. You'll send it to heaven, then with Xianyun. You can, and you have to raise the normal attack along with your elemental because you make a combination of the 2 of us. If you don't play with Xianyun, there are combinations where you don't play Xianyun, and you can play perfectly Bennett, Xilonen, Xianyun, and gaming, or you can play Bennett, Furina, Sidlali. And gaming, or you can play 80,000 combinations today, and you can insert and insert. Shilonen and a lot more, and Sitlali greatly improved gaming. But in case you don't play Xianyun, then you don't have to turn up the normal attack. In the case of playing Xianyun, which is his best in slot and his greatest damage by rotation, then if you have to raise the normal attack because the rotation has more damage and allows you to do a combo between elementals and jump with controllable. Now your elemental 6 seconds cooldown, but within your ultimate you have a lot less cooldown and you make the descending. Plus you lose 15% of your life every time you make a down, and then you have talents and even constellations that add up and subtract life to be able to perfectly activate the Ghost Hunter set. At the time when gaming came out, we always came up with alternatives in case you don't have a Ghost Hunter. Because when gaming came out, it was also Fontaine, and the set just came out on 4. Gaming came out for 4, but to this day is not able to match in any way the damage that the Hunter gives you. Ghostly. Not even with that handgun that's over here on screen that gives us critical probability and damage inflicted on 4-star descendings that only he came once. It's hard to balance with that gun. And another set other than the Hunter, the Ghost Hunter, is the one that most coefficients damage by rotation to equal conditions with all weapons possible and equipment we're going to get. It's complicated, and I don't think I recommend another set today just as it already is. In Reliquary, plus after they added it in NATLAN, is what you have to try to look. Now, the elementary ability and all this came apart from losing life is the descending ones. That makes with a scaled to talent 13 that since it is a 4 stars, it is easy to get it. The C3 for the elemental plus 3 of almost 500% and has no more as you can check. When you can do the descending when I give you the cooldown, and you'll see when you pull. The ulti that jumps the lion and the stain, and as the lion comes back to you. And when you regenerate. And you come back or you get back and you have to go to the tiger too. You get the cooldown back of the elementary, and if you don't play with Xianyun you won't do the combo with descendings that, now I explain it, then you just have to base on doing full elementary skills. That you can do about 5 or 6 by rotation if you do it well, and obviously the firster. They'll have all the team's buffs and they'll do the most damage. The ultimate, once you've had the ultimate, and it's the beginning of the rotation, you recover 30% of your maximum life. The damage of the ulti also has a scale, as you can. Z here 787% has cooldown of 15 and duration of the stain, and returning to you 12 seconds. That is 12 seconds in which you may be doing elementary skills and cost 60 energy. He being on the field generates decently, and every blow, every descending generates particles with which we now comment on the cost of energy, because like others, 4 stars have a constellation that also regenerates energy, with which really has a cost less than 60 with the C4 and does not require a gigantic investment. In charge of energy, this is the combo of gaming. We will see the talents and explain. Rotation with both Xianyun and without Xianyun Dark. First talent after becoming an enemy with the descending attack. Beastly elementary ability makes gaming regenerate life equivalent to 1.5 of its life. Maximum to 0.2 for 0.8 seconds is life auto regeneration ticks, and is to activate. The Ghost Hunter throws the elemental when the strips lose 15% of life, and once you hit, when falling his life regenerates, and with the ulti regenerates 30% of life. All this is to be activated. Well, the Ghost Hunter. Spoiler, you go with Bennett, who cures you. Xianyun also cures you, and if you go with Furina, who does that, you lose life. You also lose life. Sitlali puts you a shield, and that's why it's very comfortable. For him, a part allows to melt, with which even if you lose and gain life with the shield, it has an interruption resistance and you're not going to be in theory until you're broken. The shield's a hit. So as you can see, it's a kit made to activate the Ghost Hunter, and it's got good sustain. Then if you go into Transcension, when the life of gaming is less than 50%, you get 20% of off. Healing bonus means if you go down below half your life, you'll earn healing bonus to heal you a lot more and get back to being above half of life. But if you have more than half your life, you earn damage, 20% of damage in descending. Spoiler, when you go with Bennett and Xianyun, which is the best in slot, plus you always go to be with more than half of life. In fact, if with Sidley's shield on his best team, you'll always be full of life, in fact, because of the donkey that cures you, Sion, and the extra that cures you, Bennett. Perhaps it is missing to say that you will always have this 20% active damage inflicted on descending ones. Now before constellations, that constellations don't change gameplay. Which is it, the gameplay? Well, basically, if you play gaming Sidley Bennett, and you don't have Xianyun or anything, combination of teams where Xianyun is not, where instead of Xianyun you can put it. Both Furina and Shilonen Bassi gaming Sidley Bennett, Furina gaming Sidley Bennett. Shilonen or Gaming Sitlali Bennett, Xianyun, that substation slot. Well, without Xianyun, basically the combo is once you enter with gaming directly is throw the ulti 2 elementals. That as you throw the ulti, you can throw 2 elemental well. With Sitlali, you have to be patient, and when you get up with the elementary, expect a frame that the cryo applies to the enemy that you will be able to see in the bar. And once you do the 2 elementals while leaving you Sitlali, you just have to stay tuned in the field to chase the lions. It takes half a second, and when regenerate, it regenerates the cooldown of the elemental and back to doing elemental. If you're very lucky and the little lionia is nearby and it's coming at you and you're absorbing it quickly. With Sitlali, you have to take this care to be aware whenever the cryo is reapply to melt it again, and many happen to us, and I include that when we want E, spamming down, spamming the button, casting normal attack, and sometimes falling into a normal attack. Basically, when you have Bennett chicks, that benefits gaming and gives it 15% pyro damage. This does. You put a normal attack on pyro and break the enemy's cryo imbuing chain. For the application of Sitlali, with which you have to try that this does not happen, because if it happens, you lose all the melts. This is without Sitlali now with Xianyun. Basically, the Xianyun combo is ultimate 2 descendings of your elementary ability. That they're going to regenerate super mega ultra fast because it gives you just time to make 2 very fast. And right after making 2, instead of waiting for the cooldown of your elementary ability, you're going to make a down with the controllable, and after making a down with the controllable, you return to do the elementary skill, and another descending ability with the elementary, and then a descending ability with the controllable, and then elementary ability. Spoiler, that is the maximum damage by rotation, and you have to be very aware of the application of the enemy. And let's say that to carry a kind of rhythm is to say, if you want to. Doing all this fast like pa pa pum 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 pa pa is going to unsembuate the enemy. If you go with Sitlali with cryo, and you're going to lose the melt or vaporize, in this case with Sitlali. Melt, and you're gonna lose the damage, but if you go with Furina and do everything right with Furina, you're going to keep enemies if it's an enemy alone, and there aren't many in the area. You're going to keep it. With Hydroati with Furina, you can give yourself the luxury of trying to do the rotation of the as fast as possible with ulti 2 descending elementals of descending elemental controllable. Of elemental controllable, and there are 7 huge hits besides, but if you go with Sitlali also, you can do the same, but you have to go to the step, you have to check that the enemy get cryos back on before you hit the next hit. That's the biggest damage by gain rotation. Well, spoiler, as I said before, going with Sitlali, even if you have Xianyun, if you want to be quieter and paused, you can go making full elementals and not complicate the story. With the optimal rotation of doing everything I've explained before, i.e. you can, in all cases, go full elemental and even save yourself materials, and do not upload this. Though, go with Xianyun in the case of going with Sitlali Xianyun, because the application of Sitlali, he's got, like I say, a little cooldown where he's reapplying with a constant rhythm, and then you must be aware that it will be reapplied if you go with Furina. Not if you go with Furina. Xianyun to free Sitlali, for example, for Mavawika, then there. Yes, you do that. Climb the descending of here and make the combo of ulti 2 elementary descending. You're going to see a quantity of elemental controllable. The best in slot is with Sitlali and Xianyun. Understood. Summary again, if you go with Xianyun and with Furina, the combo of combining them. Amazing. If you go with Sitlali in all cases, you must be aware that it will be reapplied the cryo, and if you go with Xianyun and Sitlali, you can make both combos if you want comfort of D. Combo full elementals if you want to maximize the damage. The combo to combine the 2, but very cryo attention is to say has some difficulty the gameplay, but it is a game to learn, to improve, and to understand these kinds of things. Now constellations, the cone, which is what I tell you. Normally I say Gammon Cone, I can already do everything you want. It says when the stain on the ulti meets with Gammon, that is to say a little lion that I have said that when throwing the ulti comes back to regenerate the cooldown of the elemental Gammon recovers 15% of life if you do not go with double healer. I mean Xianyun Bennett, or Xylon and Bennett, and you go to some Bennett team with Sitlali Gammon and the other character is not a healer. That could be, for example, Furina or Rosaria or good Diona Shikura. It turns out that the last charge of the Ghost Hunter sometimes takes you to activate the cone simply. Ensure to activate the Ghost Hunter all the time without depending on the amount of gillets you can have, or depend on carrying 2 gillets on the team, such as Echelon and Bennett. for example, or Xianyan Bennett. That's why, as I say, it does a lot of times you already have all the playability of Gammon, but if you go the team of 4 stars of Gammon Rosaria, Diona, Bennett, Diona, cures then in the end to Chero, you already have all gameplay with minimal investment equipment that most damage gets out of Gammon C2 when Gammon he receives healing having life to the maximum. His attack increases 20%. This with Furina is more complicated. That is activated with the previous team of Citali. But playing Bennett Xianyan Citali, that gives you a shield, and you do not lack life Gammon and Gammon with a passive cone and the rest that is cured you will. To activate more continuously is to say this C2 when you combine 2 healers like Bennett Chalonen or Bennett Xianyan the active. All the time carrying Furina makes it a little more complicated, but the same. The active because Xianyan cures a lot is necessary is interesting, but it's something else will not change you. No Gammon, this is the elemental +3 descending damage that your elemental this is more. Energy to see 2 points of energy every 0.2 each time Gommet you get the descending. Basically how you're going to make 5 downs by 2 is 10 of energy with Witch of Coast. 60 passes at the cost of 50 and you will require less energy, i.e. if you don't have the C4, about 30-35 according to they team, and depending on whether Xianyan is cone, having 2 elementals the first rotation, if you have the C4, so about 125, 128, and you have per multi. This is the last 3, but the ulti is really a single hit the first time and hits less than the descending, so it's weird because the ulti doesn't hit so much though. True, no? Why not they max 6 and the chicks, the famous chicks, is the one that does change the weapon that you can play because the cheeks makes the descending elementals not commandable. These of the combo that I explained to you. Rare gain 20 probability and 40 critical damage and have more area. This makes hit more. Enemy or failure is less if for whatever it is the enemy moves that happens enough. This one's broken. Gaming can do almost everything without having the cheeks. It can do it perfectly. It's going to give you abysmal damage, and above all, it's going to allow you to weather proportion along with the hunter. Ghostly and use attack weapons that in fact technically their best weapon is the wolf's tombstone. Besides, right? This is Chicks is going to release you weapons and stop looking for things with probability and so on. And or critical damage and directly use attack weapons, i.e. permanent wolf tombstone. That you can get out at any time, but that many people after 4 years of playing. Genshin hasn't been manifest in the comments the endgame people 4 years ago. I don't have Gravestone happens, these things happen a lot in Genshin because in the end it has that RNG, but if this 6 doesn't change it, doesn't change the gameplay, I don't recommend you do crazy things to play gaming, but it's his most powerful constellation construction as well. He goes Ghost Hunter in almost all cases, also go Kali of Pyro in 100% of cases. Is not a carry of these that there are rare things. The helmet is also going to be critical damage in 99% of cases. There's a case where you can try. Gaming with Mavuika's gun is around here that doesn't activate. Remember that if you don't have points of Noctambulism, the passive that activates this weapon is not 35 critical damage and 48 attack is only 20 critical damage and 28 attack, i.e. it's like Nerfida for characters who aren't NATLAN. Maybe it's okay if you carry this gun in gaming, specifically this gun, and you have some items that they have a critical proportion of hell. You might be able to play gaming the watch now. I'm talking about him only masters usually. If you go with certain combinations, now I explain when he attacks and when I master, but it's possible in 1% of gaming cases with the weapon of Mavuika that I can make good performance if you cap the proportion with that weapon, and you have the rest of the items in the hole, i.e. everyone with more than 40 crit value get a helmet that will give you your attack. Percentage or master's degree in the main stat can also be masters because in the end he can save. Ali, for example, melt everything and make a mess of damage and nonsense. But it is a construction. So extreme, so hard to get, and so specific that I mention it just in case someone has some kind of combination of items that can give them that situation and use. Strangely, Mavuika's weapon in gaming, and not in Mavuika itself, but in 99% of cases, where you don't have all the items with 40 crit value, is basically going to wear damage helmet. Critical always critical damage because the probability will spare you because you are thirsty for. Ghost Hunter because if you have chicks, you win 20 more chances. And because let's remember that if it still, according to how many enemies you're playing, that's here, you're gonna win between 4 and 10 plus probability in descents minimum 4, so it's already 36 of set 4 of Ixanian 45. You go to character 45. And aside, if you have chicks of gaming, that is 20 more than 65 gaming has 65 of probability without doing anything. And if you play against more enemies like instead of 4, gives you 10, you go to 70 of I. Probability without doing anything when you have it chicks, then the probability will always spare you. The DI helmet is always going to be critical damage. Now the clock. If you have a weapon that works very well for cheeks, that gives you mastery, that is the rain mower. And in fact, curiously, another weapon than all. You have R5 there because it comes out from day 1 of game, exists on any banner at any time. And sometimes I'm sure you've gone out and said, maybe I'd rather have preferred 4 stars. The banner and not this weapon I'm never gonna use on anyone ever since gaming this gun is R5 careful. If you play with Furinai, it's a good weapon for him. And in the case of carrying this weapon, that gives you mastery. The clock should be ultra mega, super important punctuality attack. And I will remember when. Explain the weapons, says enemies affected by Hydrober first yes, or yes, you have to play with Furina on the team if you're going to play the gaming prime with Citadel. If in Junie Bennett this weapon doesn't. Serves you because you are not applying the 36% passive damage inflicted on enemies affected by Hydro, because with Citadel they are affected by Cryo, so very careful with this weapon that, let's say they've nerfed her because with Citadel, instead of Furina the gaming teams can't anymore. Activate it in the case of this weapon, then goes with attack clock. In the case of most of the the clock is going to be mastery because you're not only going with Bennett, but you've got one. Ability and number of combinations in which you will win a gross attack mainly. Playing Dragon Hunter Sidlali, for people who don't have Sidley with their gun that done, it's probably a lot that you want Master's Watch to melt all the punches. Basically, the clock has to be mastery concretely, and then the rest because as always. So, you're mainly going to play Pyromaster's Degree and Critical Damage Helmet in 99% of the cases will always be the same, and substat recharges up to 30-35 if you don't have the C4. If you have the C4, 25-28 critical probability and critical damage, but without going beyond the caps. I now talk about it because if you have chicks, you have to count the chi-X. If you do not have chicks, because count on that, you do not have the chicks. And last, after the recharge in proportion would say that you have to look for elementary mastery equal to the attack percentage. Does not end up bad, but I would say that elementary mastery is better since with Tombstone of the Wolf, that is the weapon that most total attack gives you more Bennett, more Dragon Hunter mainly, in Citlali, plus the nobility set, plus 80,000 extra buffos that you can surely arrive. To have the attack is what you're going to really have left over, so you have to look for Master's Degree in he. Zubstead also the attack is good, but I would say that you need to specify the mastery first, and that is what you have to look for in the substat. Now weapons as I explained before also vary. If you have chicks or you don't have chicks from gaming, because the CX gives you 20 probability and 40 damage on the 80-90% of your damage, 100% of your damage if you're doing the full combo. Elementals that I explained before, and that makes you catch the ratio, and that once you have chicks. Mainly to look for attack weapons, attack summary Wolf's Tombstone now as you go. With Citlali, you can also activate the controller of the Dissidia, this which is on screen, which is like the Gravestone of the Wolf but in Geo, because the passive of that weapon activates when you have a shield and literary cider shield. Those two are their best weapons far away, and 4 stars. The weapon of Fontaine's Forge, which is a small point tombstone, is also attack. Attack that weapon puts in a vital pact. And when you heal that vital pact gives you another bufo of passive attack, but basically how you're going to cure yourself with the Shinyon and Bennett. You're going to activate it. It's always a little headstone. That's the summary of Gaming Chicks all. That 1% that I've explained to you of Gaming Chicks with Mawaka weapon, that on top of it remains brutal, and that it can do that on some occasion with items especially powerful and very difficult to get to have a master's or attack helmet, and in that case, with this weapon, because it returns it would not be. Conventional is a hypothetical ceiling, I say, almost impossible to achieve, but the possibility exists. Thanks to this weapon and its base attack so high and the crit value and the extra percentage attack that gives you, and so on. But in the rest of the cases, the actual roof of gaming that we really say we can access almost everyone, and that is not technically impossible, is the cheat seeks with Headstone, or with Dissidia, or Indue. Your flaw with weapon, free to play, Forging Fontaine, 4-star controllable now. Let's talk about guns when you don't have the checks. When you don't have the checks, then you need to. More critical probability or critical damage than the emblem of the Sea of Reeds is technically one of his best weapons. The only problem is that with this weapon you have 33 of probability, 36 of Ghost Hunter is 69 plus 5, base 74, plus what gives you, if in an 80 with which I'm talking about. A weapon when you don't have the chicks, and you also have to look not to have in critical substats probability. Because if you have a critical probability in substats with this weapon, you're going to have a surplus probability. Then it's his best weapon, but when you don't have chicks, but it's very hard to get balance. Substats and artifacts don't usually help apart from that Kinnick's weapon by base attack and fee. Probability is also very good. You won't activate the passive because you won't play or burn. No crypting, but Kinnick's weapon for the base states is very well, and the Snake's Marrow is also very good, but same problem of the Sea of Reeds because of the topic of probability. But R4 is also very well, would be like an emblem Sea of Small Reeds, and the weapon ending in. This case of talking about weapons that are more or less not yet free to play without having the sheiks there. A weapon he mentioned at the beginning of the video that is a 4-star weapon that has come in. NATLAN forgives a little pause because he was seeing that the mic was doing weird things. Is a weapon. NATLAN that is on screen. That is a controllable that gives you damage inflicted on descending, and critical probability in descendings. That controllable is fine if you have it, R5 especially if you don't. You have the chicks for the extra probability. If you have the chicks, you're going to subdue the probability. You'll have more than 100, and it's a little weird, but it's also great. And now if you don't have the 6 weapons, free to play that I would recommend in gaming mainly is the Dark Rock Wen. It doesn't have chicks. You guys are half new. The free-to-play weapon that everyone can access, and you're gonna bust with gaming. It's the Dark Rock. It's a controllable that gives you a base attack 510, a critical damage of 55 that will allow you to turn off the ratio without having the seeks, and you willy to take gaming all over the world, smashing everything you want, and it will put you on. The way that's the free-to-play weapon if you don't have the chicks. Now the substats, first thing is me. Right now, I have 42 chance 191 damage. To remember that we have to add up the Ghost Hunter. And the cheat in my case that I have the chicks. I often explained that my gaming was a little short, I think. It's a recurring joke in my community that my gaming before Sitlily existed was getting in. 500,000 continuous per descending, that is more than, for example, what does much of yours. Riding with a cut, or many of your Hu Tao, or many of your Eulas that are not left with them. Ulti, not of those who have them with constellations, but I used to say Tapoko and people would tell me how. So if you look at what the reality is, that I still lack a pen 4. I want it to be as I wish it were, and now I explain. If you see here, I have 42 plus 20, 62 plus 36. 98 plus 4 of Shenyong, I have 100% probability, i.e., I have too much probability as I explain, and then I have 191 plus 4230, that is to say I lack critical damage if I want to reach 250, and then I recharge it as well. As you can see, this is the calculation. That is done with gaming chicks. And how can I improve this with the pen? As you see, it has a pen where I have probability and recharge that I have left over and is only 14 years critical. If there were a pen that was 24 years critical or up to 30 years critical damage, could improve this gaming, and I would do a lot more damage than I already do now, which is about 800 continuous, 700, 800 time. Down in Abyss and out of Abyss Bufos and so on can already reach more than 1,000,000 continuous. By descending then, I can improve this pen basically how an optimal gaming would be if you want it. And the crazy roof of C6 and the whole story, so the probability that you have 30 at rest here, plus 20 of the Cheens 50, plus 36 of the Ghost Hunter, 86 plus 4 is Yanyong 90, is good enough to say with that you have 30 probability here. You don't want any more, and then critical damage, considering that the cap is about 250 minus 40 of the cheeks, would be your thing to have here between 200 and 210 of a critical damage, and there you will already have a very crazy thing to recharge if, as I say, this 430-35, and yes, it's C4 25-28, and you'll already have Primalty on all teams, then Master's Degree would be great if it... You can reach at rest between 250 and 300 in my case by the pen that I taught you. If I had someone 25-30 damage and about 40 masters, just would get to everything I want and would look perfect gaming. The attack depends on the weapon, that is, the attack at rest. Don't worry because you earn 80 billion. I've got 2,500 for the tombstone. But then in the field it got 5,000 crazy, so the attack. Don't worry about those gaming stats if you don't have the C. You have to do a similar calculation. Without the 20 of probability or the 40 of damage, but that's where the dark rock enters, for example. That I taught you there with Crags you can try as you don't have the chicks to get here at 231 thing. So, and in probability, so instead of 30 plus 36, 66 more. And at 70 maybe in probability, if we... You see, you can therefore have about 35, 40, 40 without the cheeks 40 plus 36 of the set plus. If in Young it is already 80. And you've got plenty of probability too. And gaming's got this pretty easy on the set for the rest of the stuff. That I can add etc. that gaming stats, and that's it, because the teams basically I'm going to speak it quickly. But are your team the current best in the slot? Is this here the previous team? Before there was Citral, and it's this one here. And in any case between Furina and Citral, and you can rotate one and the other. If you don't have either, you can play the team I taught you about, Gaming Rosaria, Diona and Bennett. But if you want to talk about us having some 5 stars, then, as I say, try here between Citral and Furina. And here if you don't have Asian Young, you can get to Furina. And you have this equipment and it works perfectly. And you can also put here Shilonen, and this also works perfectly, ensuring that Shilonen since meta crystallized to the Pyro with O. A Bennett Elemental, and finally if you have neither Citral nor Asian Young, you can also play this right here. You can play Gaming Furina, Shilonen, Bennett. Everyone has something compared, and I'll have a little less damage than the Team Primes, but if you have the chance to play this team's absolute roof is this madness, and you've already seen in today's video several gameplays that the publishers have put for the enemies endure no more than 2 downhill the poor. They get a piece of life like that and they go with little god, a little bit more. This is the character's gaming build. Who has given more than to speak, because there are people who find it difficult to accept, and the 4 stars can do more than many of the characters who have been put in for hours of love, fun and in others in another position to this, many people who already know that they have addiction problems with their play and even unnecessary expenses, and linking with the amount of money they have put. Emotional bonding too, and feel that you mess with their investments and get angry in networks. But in the end it's a pixel, and in the end the reality of gaming is that it's just overtaken by Arlecchino and Mavuika, but for the rest it is above all the rest of Kari and Spyro that does not pass nothing, because it is a game of Chinese monkeys and all the teams can pass the abyss, but it is not. The reason for making noises or toxicities on social networks is the reality is broken, and it does what that does and cannot do other characters. Nothing happens, and in the world things work. So there is people who run more and compete in the Olympics, and people who run less and dedicate themselves to making others things like programming or watching Chinese cute games. So the world works, and there is no problem, because there are some pixels have better skills than others. Little more, leave a good like a good Ultimania, subscribe, you leave a good comment so that I think to enjoy and see the video and the channel. Leave me the comments that you have reached the end to know who it has come to the end. How much is the maximum damage per descending that you have done with command? Here below in the comments. Take care, to have a good day, and bye.